What's up, Big 12 Nation? Welcome once again to this week's episode of The Biggest 12. I, as always, am your host, Clint Foster. Thank you so much for being here with me today. If you have not already, subscribe to the Biggest 12's channel at Big 12 VOCFB. That's at Big 12 VOCFB. We want you to like this video. We want you to share this video. We want you to grow the show so we can have more and more people be a part of this community. Again, thank you so much for being with me here today. A lot to talk about the week that was. TCU football season is mercifully at an end, as are a few other Big 12 teams. And we'll talk about those who are fixing to go bowling. A lot of Big 12 teams actually going bowling as well. But first, before we get to that, please do subscribe to my personal YouTube channel. I haven't quite gotten out my TCU fans video for the week. Hoping to work on filming that as soon as this video is over with for you. So for those of you who have been bugging me on Twitter or elsewise about that, and for the rest of you, TCU fans season being over means that I can devote time to writing scripts for the rest of your teams. So I'm sure you all are now applauding very heartily, like, oh, thank God he's done talking about TCU and those piss lizards. It's just I got a lot going on, and I wish that I could do multiple videos a week. I just don't have the bandwidth for it. So now with TCU season wrapping up, as soon as I get this TCU fans during the OU game video out, got a couple ideas for some scripts I've been fooling around with in what little spare time I do have. So hopefully I can get something out for you here relatively soon. No Thanksgiving video for you this week. Sorry, I think the moment has passed. We're into Christmas season now, right? You can't see the outside of my house. I got lights on the outside of the house already, okay? So it's Christmas season. We've moved on from Thanksgiving. I do apologize that I didn't have time to get one of those out. Anyway, subscribe to my channel at Clint Foster Comedy. Follow me on Twitter at Clint_Foster55. And once again, subscribe to at Big 12 VOCFB. Turn on notifications. You want to know every Tuesday when we're doing this show. And, I know we got a little bit of an odd time start, like 6:22 today. Usually it's at 6 o'clock. Today, the posted time was 6:30. But here we are. We're ready to have a show and excited to be here with you. And yes, wet blanket. What a wonderful thing to say. Because, in the words of Willie Nelson, my heroes have always been cowboys. And they still are, it seems. Yes, that's right. We are all Cowboys this week. Oklahoma State narrowly avoiding stumbling on their own freaking feet and losing to BYU at home, getting that win in overtime to make sure that they can go and play Texas. Have the joy of being a 14-point underdog to the Texas Longhorns in Arlington this coming weekend for the Big 12 Championship. But we'll get there when we get there. Got a lot to cover today, not just last week's games, but also coaching changes, transfer portal news. A lot to talk about here. Lots to talk about. So let's take a moment to acknowledge all of the bowl-eligible teams in the Big 12 here. You got a lot of them, right? Obviously, Texas, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, Iowa State, Kansas State, Texas Tech, Kansas, and UCF. So big props and snaps, however you want to congratulate UCF for being bowl eligible their first year in the Big 12, a year that looked a little dicey at times. But ultimately, better than TCU, so, you can't hate on them for that. All right, so let's talk about the week that was. And, we'll talk about this TCU-Oklahoma game because I guess we have to, right? We got to get this out of the way. Frogs losing for the second season in a row, giving up over 60 points in a season finale to Oklahoma, losing 69-45 in Norman. I was at that game. It was no fun. The offense did come alive. You saw some good things from Josh Hoover late in that game, and defense had its moments, I suppose. I don't know that there's that many really great things you can say, though, about giving up 69 points. The pulse among TCU fans, the Fire Joey Gillespie chants have grown increasingly loud. It does not appear that TCU is going to move on from its defensive coordinator or its offensive coordinator. Looks like no changes are going to be made whatsoever. So we'll see what that means for the future of TCU football next year. if it's me that you're talking to, I think that the Frogs next year is very much a put up or shut up year. You know, you had the magical 2022 season, and you had a season that fell drastically short of expectations in this year, 2023. So if it's me, and I speak for a lot of Horned Frog fans, if you are not competing in the top half of the Big 12, if you're not in the conversation for a Big 12 title next year, then that seat for Sonny Dykes, the man who took us to a national championship, is all of a sudden hot, right? I think we're going into 2023. The coordinators' seats are already hot, right? Going into 2023. Sonny's seat may be a little warm, which is shocking to even say, but you know, college football moves too fast. Things are changing too quickly right now. You can't afford to be left, right? And it doesn't matter what you did last year, doesn't matter what you did 2 years ago. It's all about what are you doing for me right now? And you know, challenging times for the TCU Horned Frogs is all I can say. OU, of course, looked very good. And, you know, props to Oklahoma State for keeping them out of that Big 12 title. They all really did the Lord's work, at least keeping half of the SEC leavers, the SEC traders, out of that Big 12 title game. Because Texas, they look really dang good on Friday. Really dang good. They beat Texas Tech almost as bad. Well, actually, no. They beat Texas Tech worse than Oklahoma beat TCU, 57-50. I mean, none of us saw that coming, right? Texas is, of course, the favorite going into that game. I picked Texas Tech in the upset. That did not happen, to say the least. Texas was absolutely dominant in that game. It was a game that I didn't even bring myself to watch to completion because it was just, wow, they just really were taking Tech to the woodshed. And Texas is firing on all cylinders after several weeks there of close calls, several weeks of couldas and shouldas and wouldas for the teams that Texas played, just an authoritative, eternal scoreboard against Texas Tech there on Black Friday. And, you know, I hate it for my Lubbock brethren. I hate it for my tortilla throwing bros out there in West Texas. But Texas looking very solid. And I think that 57-7 score is a big reason why that and Oklahoma State showing at home are both big reasons why the line looks the way it does going into that Big 12 championship game. I mean, everyone would have expected Texas to be favored in this Big 12 championship game, but a 14-point spread, that's a lot for a championship game. That's a lot for a championship game. But we'll get there when we get there. In the meantime, let's talk about Oklahoma State's brush with death, beating BYU in double overtime, 40-34. This one looked very dicey for a long time. You got to give Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy all the credit in the world for putting together what they've put together this season, for getting the victory against BYU at home when BYU, I mean, they were a team on a mission in these last couple of games, man. They were playing as well as you could ever hope for them to play. They easily should have beaten OU. They dang near beat Oklahoma State. It's a crying shame. I mean, obviously I want my Frogs to go bowling, but if there is one team among these non-bowl eligible teams that I think is the biggest crime, I think it's honestly BYU, because they played so hard, so out of their mind here, their first year in the Big 12, and just falling that one game short. I mean, that really stings. Really stings for those 33-year-old seniors for sure. But Oklahoma State gets the win. They punch their ticket to the Big 12 title game, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And, you know, it's warm and fuzzy feelings all around everywhere except for Provo, right? Very good that we've at least got one of those hateful eight, one of us in that title game, right? Absolutely. Okay. Yeah, and you're right, Wet Blanket. BYU is no joke at all. It's a crying shame that they didn't get bowl. The team, though, that did, the newcomer that did, UCF, they did it on the back of a 27-13 win in the Space Bowl. Okay, UCF, owners of space for at least another year, beating up on Houston, who, by the way, after falling to 4-8 on the season, Houston moving on from Dana Holgorsen. This was the big coaching carousel news in the Big 12 over the last couple of days. Dana Holgorsen, indeed, after us talking about it all season, do you move on from Dana Holgorsen? How hot is his seat? Well, Houston says it's hot enough. Get that boy out of there. Take your Red Bull and don't let the door hit you on the way out, right? Firing Dana Holgorsen. So Now the question becomes, who is Houston going to hire? There was some talk about Gary Patterson, who is now saying he wants to get back into coaching. I never really thought that had much legs to it, him going to Houston. The one that I'm seeing the most on Twitter, and probably a lot of y'all are seeing it as well, is Cliff Kingsbury as a potential head coach down there in Houston, which I think would be an incredible mistake. Incredible mistake. Cliff Kingsbury, no one has failed upward more than Cliff Kingsbury in any profession, possibly, quite possibly. It really helps when you look nice, right? I think that's a big reason why this guy continues to get jobs despite not being very good at much else besides maybe being an offensive coordinator. Dude is not a head coach. He's not. He's not been good at it literally anywhere he's been. Ask Texas Tech, right? If there is one place where Cliff Kingsbury was going to have success as a head coach, it was freaking Texas Tech. He couldn't win with Pat Mahomes, man. You think this guy who couldn't win with Pat Mahomes, a generational talent at quarterback, is suddenly going to make Houston competitive in the Big 12? Good luck, bro. Good. That's all I got to say. Good luck. We'll see what Houston does. But again, a very disappointing season for the Cougs. And, it's going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be interesting to watch. I didn't even mention, by the way, with coaching changes, we mentioned the OU game. Jeff Lebby, the offensive coordinator for Oklahoma, who very famously had his father-in-law, Art Briles, on the field after the SMU game, leaving the Sooner State, going to be the head coach at Mississippi State. By all accounts, not taking Kendall Briles with him, much to the chagrin of most of the Fort Worth city limits. But Jeff Lebby moving on to Mississippi State. It's going to be interesting to see if there are any dominoes that fall in recruiting of the transfer portal as a result of that change from Oklahoma to Mississippi State. We'll of course we'll keep half an eye on that. It's Mississippi State. This is the biggest 12. All right, we're gonna watch that all that closely. Okay, we'll watch it a little bit closely. Okay, elsewhere, another team that did not shockingly make any coaching changes after this game. West Virginia beating Baylor 34-31. Very odd choice of game on rivalry week. I mean, personally, I think you got to have TCU Baylor on rivalry week, but who am I? What do I know, right? This is the conference that isn't even going to protect Farmageddon as a protected rivalry moving forward. We'll talk about that. Believe you me, we'll talk about that. West Virginia winning the nail biter over Baylor in Waco in front of a crowd of hundreds, perhaps. Maybe not even hundreds. I mean, I know they were selling tickets for $1 to get into this game. I mean, times are tough in Waco. Times are very tough. And if you have any Baylor friends, homie, man, lift them up, right? They are going through it. And especially after the fact that Baylor has reaffirmed its commitment to Dave Aranda, and it doesn't appear that a whole lot of changes are going to happen. They are getting a new offensive coordinator, right? They're moving on from Jeff Grimes, but they've got a lot more problems than just offensive play calling down there in Waco. A lot more problems, and there's not a lot of reason for Bear fans to be excited right now. But, good on West Virginia. If you're a West Virginia fan, I think you got to be overjoyed with the way the season went. We'll have our full, after bowl season, we'll have our full post-mortem season retrospective, and we'll grade all the teams and talk about how everyone did. But West Virginia, man, an 8-win season when so many experts were picking you to be at the bottom of the conference. I mean, this is a major victory for the Climb Trusters, right? The major victory for Neil Brown. 8-4 on the season, going bowling, likely going to a very good bowl at that, getting those extra practices in, potentially playing in front of some potential recruits down there in Florida, maybe. We'll see. But yes, big end of the season for West Virginia. End of a season that sounded a little bit like a moist fart there for Baylor, right? And no changes from Dave Aranda. I mean, hey, and this is the thing. It gets lost with us fans. We all want to say, like, fire him, blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's humans behind this, right? And Dave Aranda seems like a wonderful human. Like, this is a guy. I have no love lost for Baylor. All right. Y'all know I bleed purple when you cut me. Baylor is the team that I sports hate more than any other team. It's impossible to hate Dave Aranda. That is a very good individual. And I hate that he's struggling so much. And I think Baylor wants him to succeed, but it's just not working. Even though they went to the Sugar Bowl and had literally their best season in school history 2 years ago. it just really leaves you scratching your head. And I mean, at a certain point, you got to make that change that you don't want to make, that uncomfortable decision. But right now, no changes. Kansas finishing on a high note. You know what? We were justified in this one. Remember, we said, I have no idea why this line looks the way it was. Kansas was only like a touchdown favorite over Cincinnati in Cincinnati. They did blow them out, just like I told you they would. 49-16. Cincinnati also ends the season at 3-9. Kansas ends the season at 8-4, just like West Virginia after a dominant win. Arrow is absolutely pointing up for the Jayhawks. That I know the Sunflower Showdown hurt. You wanted to beat Kansas State there, but there is nothing but optimism in Lawrence when you talk about football. And that is something that has not been the case for a very long time, since about 2007, 2008, right? That's a long time. And now we got to talk about the most fun game by far of the weekend, Farmageddon, man, in the snow. Does it get any better than that? Iowa State getting the upset victory, 42-35 over Kansas State in the snow, in Farmageddon. Why is this not a protected rivalry, man? What are we even doing here? Oh, my gosh. That was everything that you want from Big 12 football. That game, to me, was like the advertisement for Big 12 football moving forward. A fun conference with passionate fans watching high-scoring football. This is the advertising pitch, right? And yet we're not protecting this rivalry. But man, crazy game. Iowa State improves to 7-5 on the season, knocks Kansas State down to 8-4, and eliminated them from any potential tiebreaker scenario for the Big 12 title. But man, more of this, please. More Farmageddon in the snow. It was amazing. Iowa State, another team that I think, if you're an Iowa State fan, you got to be extremely pleased with the way things turned out this season. As bad as they started, I mean, that is quite the Gundy-esque turnaround by Matt Campbell to get his guys bowl eligible, to get his guys, in the top half of the, top half of the conference. They're sixth in the Big 12. So top half of the conference. That's very admirable, very awesome stuff. Okay, so before we move on to talk about this Big 12 championship and the reason that I'm wearing this very stylish Garth Brooks-esque cowboy hat, we got to talk about a little other news besides the coaching changes. We talked about Dana Holgorsen. Nobody else getting fired as of yet. It is now transfer portal season. Going to be very interesting to watch over the ensuing days who else enters this transfer portal. We've already had some big names put their name into the mix, and there's no bigger than Will Howard for Kansas State. We just talked about Farmageddon. Will Howard, some of you saw on Twitter maybe, as he's leaving the stadium, he does the little last look thing, one last look at the field. He announces that he, as well as a couple other Kansas State players, intend to enter the transfer portal. This was a shocker to me. I would love to hear from Tim or John or anyone else, any of our other Wildcat bros who tune in. How shocked were you to hear about Will Howard transferring as a grad transfer? It's crazy, man. This is just the new world we live in. I assume that it's because you've got Avery Johnson, who's the heir apparent. But, why? I don't think Avery Johnson, who knows? We're not in the program. Maybe it's a situation where they're like, Will, we need you to transfer because Avery Johnson's going to transfer if you don't, and then we're mortgaging our future. Maybe that's what's happening. Maybe it's a situation where Will knows that Avery Johnson is ready to take more snaps, and he's taking one for the team. I don't know. But either way, I'm shocked. This is a dude who won the Big 12 title for Kansas State over TCU last year, right? The thing they love to hang their hat on. And he had himself a pretty solid season here, and all of a sudden he's leaving Kansas State. Wet Blanket Will did the double look, right? It's like when you're leaving Disneyland, right? You look at the castle one more time, so look at that place one more time. This I don't even know what to make of it. It's crazy that Will Howard's leaving Kansas State. Some interesting potential landing spots I've seen, among them, and this is going to kill Kansas State fans if this happens, is Mizzou. Oh my gosh, can you even imagine if Will Howard ends up at Mizzou? That's almost sacrilege. But that's a crazy one. Some other big-time announcees going into the transfer portal. We, of course, have heard about Tyler Shuck from Texas Tech. He's moving on. It is very much Oh, geez Louise, I forgot the kid's name. The kid who just lost at Texas. It's not Tyler Shuck's team anymore, right? He threw enough interceptions to lose that job for himself. Baron Morton. It's Baron Morton's team now in Texas Tech. And Tyler Shuck's moving on. He's already transferred once in his career from Oregon. Going to move on again. We'll see where he ends up. And Blake Shapen as well from Baylor, another quarterback. Three big start. Well, at one time in the year, all of them were starting quarterbacks in the Big 12, all moving on from their current landing spots. Also some rumblings. I don't know if y'all have heard this, that Arch Manning, I should say, little Arch Manning might be transferring from Texas. Malik Murphy also might be transferring from Texas. We're going to have to wait and see what becomes of that. But it's wild times, man. Wild times in the transfer portal. I know that there's a lot of fear within the TCU ranks that the Bailey brothers might be transferring. Hopefully that's not true. Those being, of course, Amani and Jordan Bailey, our running back and a backup wide receiver. Two very athletic dudes from the Fort Worth area. But, we'll see what happens. It's a new era of college football, and I'm sure that all of us are really looking for our teams to fill certain spots in the transfer portal. Please let me know who you want your team to target in the transfer portal position-wise. For me, it's interior offensive line above everything else, man. That was our biggest weakness this year. We have got to shore up that offensive line with some experience. We're also losing our two best tackles. We've got to get some offensive linemen in here, and preferably, I'm not hearing anything from within the program about us targeting anyone outside of that one defensive tackle out of Penn, but that everybody's targeting. But defensive line is another big need area, specifically rush defensive ends, I think. That'd be very nice to have. But let me know who you want your team to target. The biggest transfer portal news I've heard on TCU is that a particular Boise State receiver who is transferring out of Boise State, former Azle product. Those of you who aren't familiar with DFW, Azle is very close to Fort Worth. It's just northwest of Fort Worth, just right outside the city limits. He has entered his name into the transfer portal, most likely coming to TCU as well. I believe his name's McAllister, if I remember that correctly. But, y'all don't care about that. I don't even know why I'm looking up. Okay, yes, Eric McAllister. Eric McAllister, former 3-star wide receiver, big play guy, potentially coming to TCU. But anyway, yeah, let me know who you hope your team targets. Again, for TCU, I'm really hoping for some offensive linemen in the transfer portal. And let me know what your thoughts were about Will Howard. I mean, that's crazy stuff, right? I never would have saw that coming. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this Big 12 championship game that we got coming up here, because I think it's no secret how the Biggest 12 wants this game to go, how every hateful aider in their right mind wants this game to go. The interesting thing is, how do Oklahoma fans want this to go, right? Do you root for your biggest rival, or do you root for your other biggest rival, right? Or do you just root for the earth to swallow them both? Okay, here we go, Tim. Let's see what you're thinking about the transfer portal. Tim says we're going to need some receivers, and on defense, we're going to need a linebacker and 2 corners. So everybody, right? If we could have everybody, that'd be great. I see no problems with what you're saying there. West Virginia, very solid defense this last year, right? And you want to keep that rolling, definitely, if you're the Mountaineers. Fill in those linebacker spots. Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about this Big 12 championship game. As I mentioned, the Oklahoma State Cowboys are a 14-point underdog in this game. I think that it is in large part because of the outcome of the Texas Tech game, as well as the outcome of the Oklahoma State BYU game, with Oklahoma State narrowly avoiding a colossal disaster in that game at home. It is interesting that Oklahoma State has not played Texas this year, right? That's an interesting piece of this whole thing. And Gundy's got his magic working. I'll tell you what, Texas is, like I said, they're firing on all cylinders right now. They had all those near misses, and they seem extremely motivated to do everything that they can to control their own destiny and get themselves into the Big 12 title game. But I mean, Ollie Gordon is a tough running back, man. He is a tough dude to stop. And you've got Alan Bowman playing his best football of his career. Very easily, I think you could say that. I think that maybe there was a little bit of Oklahoma State looking past BYU and thinking about that Big 12 title game potentially. Maybe that had played a little bit of a role in that double overtime victory there. The head says that Texas wins this game, but my heart won't allow me to be okay with that, right? We cannot allow Texas, of all teams, to win a Big 12 title on their way out the door. I mean, that is just wrong, especially after all of the futility, the beautiful years of futility of the last 15 years. Yeah. So let's see, Sam, what are you thinking here? Longhorns will stop the run. Well, that's the thing, right? If Texas sells out to stop the run, which I think if I'm Texas, that's absolutely what I'm doing. I'm loading the box. I am daring Alan Bowman to throw the ball. I'm saying, Ollie Gordon, you are not beating me, right? And they got the hosses to do that. And yeah, you're totally right, Jackson. Oklahoma State hasn't played Texas Tech, or Baylor this season. Like, who have they been playing? None of their like, with the exception of Oklahoma, none of their real like traditional rivals in the Big 12. Very weird. So, but all the intangibles are on Oklahoma State's side, right? I mean, they had the heartbreaker against Baylor 2 years ago in this very same game here, just inches away from victory, inches away. And you know that Mike Gundy is just like got all the bulletin board material as a result of that. I mean, I want to believe that Oklahoma State can win this game. If they do, it's going to be some kind of crazy something. It's going to be some kind of 1 point, 2 point win. And what Blanket agrees with me. Oklahoma State never makes it easy. That's why we have hope. Exactly. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. If I was to make a scoring prediction, I mean, Oklahoma State. Yeah. Okay. All right. Oklahoma State, they can win this game, right? It's got to be like 38-36 if they're going to win this game. It's got to be a shootout. If Texas stops them from scoring, then this is going to be a blowout, right? Which sounds obvious, but Oklahoma State, I don't think is going to stop Texas's offense all that well, even without Jonathan Brooks. Right? I think they got to win a shootout. That's kind of how I see this thing going. Maybe even like 45-42. I think this is going to be a high score. I think it's going to be a fun game to watch. Even if Texas wins, I think Oklahoma State's going to give them hell. I think Oklahoma State's going to give them everything they got, and which they should. I mean, listen, this is like we've got the might of every hateful eighter, every Tech fan, TCU fan, Baylor fan, West Virginia fan, Iowa State, Kansas State. We're all rooting for you, Oklahoma State. We all are trying to will you over the finish and get a Big 12 title. I will tell you this, though. I think even if Texas wins this game, I think they're going to be held out of the playoff, and that is going to be the most hilarious freaking thing in the world. It almost makes me okay with the idea of them winning the Big 12 just because it will be so freaking funny when they end up ranked like 6th, and you've got like because I mean, like, let's look at the playoff picture for a second. I know usually we don't talk about national football because this is the biggest 12. We're focused on our heart of hearts, right? Our teams that we love. But like I see Michigan is virtually a lock at this point. There's no universe in which they lose to Iowa. Michigan's a lock. You're going to have the SEC champion in. Most likely we'll say that's Georgia, going for potentially their 3rd straight national championship. Alabama never even did that, man. That's insane. That's truly insane. Crazy what Georgia has built down there. You're going to have the Pac-12 champion in, whether that's Washington or Oregon. I really think it's going to be Oregon. It's tough to beat a team twice, right? Nearly impossible to beat a team twice. I can tell you that from last year, right? So you're going to have, and then if Florida State, assuming Florida State's undefeated, you can't leave Florida State out, right? If they beat Louisville, which they should, you're not going to hold an undefeated Power 5 champion out of the title game. And then that leaves Texas, who, by the way, Ohio State is ranked above Texas today. The most recent college football rankings came out. Ohio State is at 6th after losing the only game on their schedule, right, to Michigan. the only real team they've played, except for maybe Notre Dame. Notre Dame's like, okay. But they're still ranked above Texas, right? So with Texas not having an opportunity to redeem itself against Oklahoma, that could be the thing that holds them out of the playoff. And it would be so freaking funny. I would just love it so much. So very much. Okay, but yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, let me know, of course, your score predictions on the Big 12 championship. I mean, like I said, the head says Texas wins. I don't think they cover the spread. I think no matter what, Oklahoma State gives them a good game. I think it's gonna be a fun game to watch. Overall, it's gonna be a very fun championship weekend to watch. Very, very fun. I mean, and then, but you know, my official, okay, for the receipts, for the sake of the fam, for the sake of the Hateful Eight community, my official prediction is 45-42 Oklahoma State. That's my official prediction, and I hope it happens. I really do hope it happens. Let's see. Okay, Chris LeClaire, he's with me. Let's go. 38-31 Oklahoma State. Ooh, a full touchdown victory. Okay, Chris. If that happens, that'd be pretty freaking funny too. Anything to keep Texas from hoisting a trophy, man. Anything to keep them from hoisting a trophy. I'm on board with it. Okay, Web Blanket, what do you think about this whole Texas situation? I just don't see Texas as big and bad as most do. They are number 7. I mean, you're right? We've said it. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times on the show. They have flirted with disaster so many times this year. There's so many games that they should have lost or could have lost. Nobody in the Big 12 is dominant this year. And here's the thing. Even if Texas did get into the playoff this year, I think that they would get owned. But and I know this sounds crazy because, like, oh my God, they beat Alabama on the road. But Alabama at the beginning of the season was a totally different team than Alabama right now, right? Jaden Milroe had not figured himself out yet. Texas defense played lights out in that game. You know, I'm not saying Texas is a bad team, but they're not an elite team. Right? Nobody in the Big 12 is elite. That's why there's so much parity, right? That's why there was like talk of a potential 4-way tie to get into the title game, right? So yeah, they're number 7 for a reason. And Oklahoma State can absolutely take advantage of that. They absolutely can. They just don't match up exceptionally well on paper, right? But that doesn't, I mean, Oklahoma State on paper, nobody thought Oklahoma State would even be in this position on paper, right? That's why we play the games, for God's sake. Nobody saw Oklahoma State. I certainly didn't see Oklahoma State as a potential Big 12 title contender. If I'm being totally honest, I wasn't even totally sure if Oklahoma State would be able to make a bowl this year. I mean, we all remember the massive transfer portal exodus that they experienced as Spencer Sanders tries to torpedo the program on his way out. Everybody leaves Oklahoma State. Everybody leaves Stillwater. I mean, Mike Gundy, he deserves a dadgum medal for what he has done. May very well be coach of the year, honestly, in the Big 12 after what he's done. This is a heck of a job. And, you know, nothing would be sweeter than finishing this sucker off with a Big 12 title over at least favorite conference mate, Texas. I cannot wait for them to be the SEC's problem. I'm going to miss playing Texas. I love regional games. If it was up to me, we'd have the Southwest Conference back plus the Oklahoma schools, man. I love regional conferences. I love playing Texas, but I am so ready to be done with their BS. Right? I'm ready for them to be out of here for that reason. Let them be the SEC's problem. And it will be funny to watch them try and exert their will year in, year out on SEC decision-making when, you know, they're like barely registering on the Richter scale out there. So that's pretty much all I've got for today. I haven't seen any more predictions to talk about. So, okay, everyone's being a little quiet. That's fine. But, you know, we will have a full, whenever the bowls are announced, probably by next Tuesday, hopefully by next Tuesday, we'll definitely have a bowl preview episode. After the bowls are over with, we will have our full post-mortem where we talk about how everyone's seasons went, and then we'll get into some off-season chicanery, which is always fun. And hopefully I'll have lots of fun guests for you. We'll play some fun games and do all kinds of fun stuff. In the meantime, please keep your eyes on this channel, okay? Here's Chris's picks for the playoffs. Georgia, Michigan, Washington, Florida State. I'd love to see it. I really want to see Washington in the playoff, man. Washington, to me, is the TCU, last year's TCU. This year is Washington, not just because they're purple, but because they have there's been some magic up there, man. They've escaped so many games, just like TCU did, where you're like, they had no business winning that game. Michael Penix is so freaking fun to watch. I really want to see them in the playoff. I think it'd be very fun. So thank you so much, y'all, for being with me. Keep your eyes on this channel. Subscribe. Tell your friends. Tell your grandma. Right? Subscribe to at Big 12 BOCFB. All right, we get lots of stuff. It's not just the biggest 12. It's all kind of cool stuff on this channel. Mark was on this channel earlier today. Okay, so you never know, or yesterday. I don't know. My time runs together. So you definitely want to be subscribed. Okay, you definitely want to have that bell on. Subscribe at Big 12 BOCFB. Follow my channel at Clint Foster Comedy. I am going to hopefully, for the love of God, get this video shot tonight. And then get it edited as quickly as possible, and then we'll get into the all Big 12 videos once again, or maybe I'll throw some Pac-12 in there again, some Death of the Pac-12 videos. Lots of fun ideas, lots of fun scripts I'm not quite done with yet, but thinking about and working my way through. You'll definitely want to be subscribed to my channel if you want to be a part of that, and follow me on Twitter at Clint_Foster55. Surely not all of you follow me on Twitter, right? Or at least if you do follow me, you haven't interacted with me. Like, what blanket? I don't know if I've seen you on Twitter. Forgive me if I have. But I don't think I've seen you on Twitter, baby. Come on, follow me. Come on. Let's do this thing and grow the show. Grow the show, grow the show, grow the show. So, in the meantime, congrats. We all survived another season. Some of us better than others. Good luck in bowl selection. And go frickin' Pokes. Hope your team wins. Go Big 12. I'll see you next time.